Before we begin, please note that the information provided in this video is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute professional business or financial advice. SEO is a complex and ever-changing field, and the results of any strategy can vary significantly. You should always conduct your own research and consider consulting with a qualified professional before making any decisions based on the content of this presentation. Let me tell you about a client we'll call Mark. Mark runs a fantastic e-commerce business based in Austin, Texas, selling high-end grilling accessories. He's passionate, his products are top-notch, and he built his website's traffic slowly and steadily over 5 years. He was ranking on page 1 for some decent keywords, but he was stuck. He was working 60-hour weeks, and the idea of manually writing more blog posts, building more links, and optimizing every single product page felt completely overwhelming. He wanted to scale. He needed leverage. So, he did what many smart, overworked business owners in the US are doing right now. He bought the promise of automation. He invested nearly $2,000 into a popular, all-in-one AI SEO platform. The sales page was incredible. It promised to automate your content strategy, build backlinks on autopilot, and skyrocket your rankings while you sleep. For Mark, this wasn't just a tool. It was a lifeline. He plugged it in, followed the setup wizard, and for the first month things seemed okay. The software was publishing 3 AI-generated blog posts a week, just like it promised. Then came month 2. A strange quiet. His sales analytics, usually a predictable rhythm of daily orders, started to stutter. Month 3 was a bloodbath. His organic traffic, the lifeblood of his business, hadn't just dipped. It had fallen off a cliff. A 60% drop. His best-selling product, which had been ranked number 3-4, Best Brisket Smoking Kit, was gone from the first 10 pages of Google. Vanished. The tool he bought to save him time and make him money had systematically dismantled 5 years of hard work. Mark had paid to have his own business destroyed. This isn't a rare horror story. This is the quiet reality for thousands of American business owners who are being sold a lie. The lie is that you can outsource the most critical parts of your marketing, thinking, strategy, and creating genuine value to a piece of software. It's a seductive promise, especially now. You see your competitors using AI, you hear about automation everywhere, and you feel this immense pressure to keep up or get left behind. But here's the truth. The world of SEO automation is a minefield, and most of the maps you're being sold are leading you directly into the blast zone. On one side, you have powerful, legitimate tools that can save you hundreds of hours and give you the data to make brilliant decisions. On the other, you have digital snake oil parasitic software designed to prey on your desire for an easy solution, leaving your website penalized, de-indexed, and in a deeper hole than when you started. This video is your guide through that minefield. We are going to pull back the curtain on the entire SEO automation industry, not with vague theories but with a clear, practical framework. By the end of this presentation, you will know the difference between the automations that create empires and the ones that create ruins. You'll learn the 3 distinct categories of SEO automation, which ones are safe and incredibly effective for your US-based website, and which ones are a red flag that could trigger a catastrophic Google penalty. This isn't just about avoiding disaster. It's about giving you the clarity to confidently choose the right tools, for the right tasks, to actually grow your business. And this conversation couldn't be more urgent than it is right now. The game has fundamentally changed. For years, SEO was largely about reverse engineering a machine. You figured out the signals Google's algorithm was looking for, keywords here, backlinks there, and you fed it those signals. Many early automation tools were built for that old game. They were designed to produce content and links at a massive scale, overwhelming the algorithm with sheer quantity. But that era is over. Google's recent core updates, especially what's known as the Helpful Content Update, represent a seismic shift in this philosophy. Google is no longer just a machine that counts keywords. It's an increasingly sophisticated engine trying to understand one thing: user intent. It's trying to reward content that is genuinely helpful, insightful, and created for humans, not just for search engine bots. Think about it. When you search for something, you want a real answer from someone with real experience, not a soulless, algorithmically generated article that just rephrases the top 10 results. Google knows this, and it is now aggressively demoting and even de-indexing content that it deems unhelpful. And what is the #1 source of unhelpful content on the internet right now? Cheap, low-quality, fully automated content generation. The very thing Mark's $2,000 tool was designed to do. These tools are now locked in an arms race with Google, and your website is the battlefield. Using the wrong kind of automation is like walking into that battle wearing the enemy's uniform. You will be targeted. To navigate this new reality, you have to understand that not all automation is created equal. The term SEO automation is thrown around to describe a vast range of tools and processes, and lumping them all together is the single biggest mistake you can make. So let's build a framework. Let's break it down into 3 distinct pillars. The first pillar, we'll call it data and analytics automation. This is the good. This is your co-pilot. This category includes tools that automate the collection and processing of information. Think about rank trackers that automatically check your keyword positions every day. Think about website crawlers that automatically scan your entire site for technical errors like broken links or missing titles. Think of backlink monitors that alert you when you gain or lose a link. Tools like SEMrush, Ahrefs, or Screaming Frog live here. They don't do the SEO for you. They do the brutal, time-consuming data gathering, organize it into clean reports, and hand you the information you need to be a smarter pilot. This type of automation is not only safe, it's essential. Trying to do SEO at any serious level without it is like trying to fly a plane blindfolded. The second pillar is process and workflow automation. This is the good with caution. This is your power tool. These tools don't just give you data, they help you act on it more efficiently. This could be software that automates parts of your outreach process, helping you find contact information for potential link partners. It could be a tool that analyzes your content and automatically suggests internal linking opportunities. Or AI-powered briefing tools that structure a content outline for your human writers. The key here is that a human is still in control. A power saw can help you build a house much faster than a handsaw, but you still have to measure the wood, draw the line, and guide the blade. If you're careless, you can still make a huge mess. This pillar is about speeding up manual tasks, but it always requires human strategy, human review, and human approval. And that brings us to the third pillar, the one where Mark got into trouble. This is content and link building automation. This is the bad and the ugly. This is the robot that promises to do your job for you. This category includes AI article spinners that take existing content and rewrite it to pass plagiarism checks. It includes fully automated content farms that churn out hundreds of low-quality articles on any topic imaginable. And it includes automated link building networks, or PBNs, that promise to build hundreds of backlinks to your site with the push of a button. This is the pillar that sells the dream of set it and forget it SEO, and it is fundamentally incompatible with the modern internet. It is designed to create the exact kind of low-value, unhelpful, and manipulative content that Google is now hunting with extreme prejudice. It's not a co-pilot or a power tool. It's an abdication of responsibility. It's telling the robot to fly the plane, build the house, and do your job without any regard for quality or the end user's experience. The core misunderstanding, the trap that so many business owners fall into, is confusing these 3 pillars. You go looking for a solution from Pillar 1, a tool to help you track your data better, but the slick marketing and bold promises from a Pillar 3 company lure you in. They sell you a dream of a fully automated business, blurring the lines and hiding the catastrophic risk. They sell you the robot when all you really needed was a better dashboard for your cockpit. So, to truly protect your business and learn how to leverage automation for explosive growth, we have to start by dissecting our biggest enemy. We need to put Pillar 3 under a microscope. Before we explore the powerful tools and strategies that are working right now, we must first understand the number 1 threat to your website's health in this new era of AI. Fully automated content generation and link building. We're going to look at the anatomy of these tools, how they work, why they fail, and I'll give you a clear checklist to identify if your website is currently at risk, perhaps without you even realizing it. It's time to face the beast. Let's start with content. Imagine a business owner, we'll call him Mark. Mark runs a website selling high-end coffee equipment. For years he's been grinding it out, pun intended, writing blog posts himself. The ultimate guide to pour over coffee. Espresso machine maintenance 101. It's slow, tedious work. His site gets some traffic, but it's a plateau. Then, he discovers an AI content automation tool. It promises him 50, 100, even 200 blog posts a month, all perfectly SEO optimized. For a few $100, he can flood his niche with content. He signs up. The first month, he publishes 150 articles. The topics are perfect. Best burr grinders under $200. How to steam milk for a latte. Chemex versus V60. And something incredible happens. His traffic starts to climb. First 10%, then 30%, then it doubles. Mark feels like he's found the ultimate cheat code. He's outsmarted the system. He's a genius. He's creating a content empire at the push of a button. This right here is the siren song of SEO automation. The promise of scale without the effort. But what Mark doesn't see is the foundation of his new empire is built on sand. And the tide is coming in. To understand why, we need to dissect these tools. How do they actually work? It's not magic, it's a formula. First, you give it an input, a keyword like best coffee beans for cold brew. The tool then goes to work like a digital spy. It scrapes the top 10 or 20 results on Google for that exact search term. It analyzes everything. The headlines, the subheadings, the word count, the questions being answered, the related keywords being used. It creates a structural blueprint of what Google is currently rewarding. It sees that the top articles mention coarse grinds, dark roasts, and specific beans from Colombia and Ethiopia. It notes that they all have a section on brewing time and water-to-coffee ratio. It has its checklist. Then stage 2 begins. The tool feeds this blueprint and all the scraped information into a large language model or LLM, think GPT-4, Claude, or something similar. The prompt it sends is incredibly sophisticated, far more than what you or I would type. It might say something like, write a 2,000-word article on the best coffee beans for cold brew. Use the H1, the ultimate guide to cold brew beans. Include H2S4, why grind size matters, top 5 bean recommendations, and brewing instructions. Mention the keywords coarse grind, low acidity, and chocolate notes. Write in an authoritative but friendly tone. Structure the article based on the provided analysis of the top 10 SERP results. The LLM, being the incredible pattern matching machine that it is, obliges. It synthesizes the information from the top-ranking pages and generates a brand new article that ticks all the boxes. It has the right headings, the right keywords, the right length. On the surface, it looks like a perfect piece of SEO content. It's a Frankenstein's monster of what's already successful. And this is why it works at first. Early versions of Google's algorithm were heavily reliant on these kinds of on-page signals. Does the page have the keyword in the title? Does it mention related terms? Is the content long enough? These automated tools are masters at satisfying that old checklist. They create content that is, by all technical definitions, optimized. It's like a student who memorizes the answers to a practice test. They can fill in the bubbles correctly, but they have zero actual understanding of the subject. For a while, they might even get an A. Mark's website traffic was booming because his 150 new articles were perfect imitations. They looked just like the successful content that was already out there, so Google's algorithm at a surface level thought, hey, this looks like the other stuff we like. Let's rank it. This initial success is the most dangerous part of the process. It provides positive reinforcement. It makes you believe the cheat code is real. It encourages you to double down, to produce even more. But here's the first critical flaw in the machine, the fatal assumption. These tools operate on the premise that SEO is about mimicking what already works. But modern SEO, and more importantly modern Google, is about providing unique value and satisfying user intent. User intent isn't just about the words someone types. It's about the problem they are trying to solve. When someone searches best coffee beans for cold brew, they aren't just looking for a list. They have a deeper problem. Maybe they're new to cold brew and are overwhelmed by the options. Maybe their previous attempts have been too bitter or too weak, and they're looking for a solution. They are seeking trust, experience, and a genuine recommendation. An automated article can't provide that. It can tell you that dark roasts are popular for cold brew because it scraped that fact from 10 other articles. But it can't tell you why. It can't share a personal story about how it discovered a specific single-origin bean from a small farm in Guatemala that produced the smoothest, most chocolatey cold brew imaginable. It can't show you a picture of the actual beans or a video of the brewing process with genuine tips learned through trial and error. It has no experience. It has no taste buds. It has never actually made a cup of coffee. The content is hollow. It's a perfect-looking shell with nothing inside. This is the concept of AT, which Google has been screaming about for years. Experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. AI-generated content, by its very nature, has zero experience. It's a parrot, not a person. Let's take a more serious example from the your money or your life category. Imagine you're searching for early signs of a heart attack. Do you want an article written by an AI that scraped WebMD and the Mayo Clinic? Or do you want an article written by a board-certified cardiologist with 20 years of experience, who can share subtle, real-world signs they've seen in their actual patients? The automated article might be factually correct, but it lacks the depth, the nuance, and the trust that comes from real human experience. Google knows this, and its entire mission is to differentiate between the two. It wants to connect its users with the cardiologist, not the content-scraping robot. For Mark and his coffee website, this distinction is everything. His automated article on Chemex versus V60 can list the technical differences, filter thickness, brew time, body of the coffee. But a real coffee enthusiast, a human, can describe the feeling of the ritual, the zen-like process of the Chemex pour, the clarity and brightness of a V60 cup that reminds them of a specific coffee shop in Portland. That's the content that builds a brand. That's the content that earns a user's trust and a sale. The automated content is just noise. It's information without insight. And while it might have fooled a simpler algorithm, Google's machine learning has evolved. It's now actively hunting for signals of real-world experience. It looks for author bios, for unique images and videos, for first-person language, for details that simply cannot be faked or synthesized from existing content. The very foundation of this automated strategy, mimicry, is now its greatest vulnerability. Mark's traffic is climbing, but he's unknowingly been planting thousands of red flags all over his website. The algorithm is watching, and the system designed to identify helpful, human-first content is about to run its course. The sand beneath his empire is beginning to shift. The first tremor is silent. It's not a sudden cataclysmic event, but a subtle, almost imperceptible change in the data. A line on a graph that was once a steep, triumphant climb toward the sky now flattens, then dips. Just a few percentage points. Alex sees it. He's a man who lives by his analytics dashboard. He dismisses it. A seasonal fluctuation. A tracking anomaly. Maybe a holiday weekend in the United States threw off the numbers. It's noise, not signal. His confidence, bolstered by months of exponential growth, is a fortress. He believes in the system he built. Why wouldn't he? It's logical. It's scalable. It's efficient. The solution to a slight dip in his mind is simple: more. He dials up the content velocity, instructing his automated scripts to generate another 1,000 articles, targeting a new set of long-tail keywords. He's pouring gasoline on a fire he doesn't realize is burning his own house down. What Alex fails to understand is that Google's modern algorithm isn't a simple gatekeeper you can trick with a high volume of keys. It's more like a sophisticated immune system for the entire internet. It doesn't just look at one page, one article, one keyword at a time. It develops a holistic understanding of a website. It learns to recognize the digital equivalent of healthy tissue versus diseased tissue. And his website, once a shining example of rapid growth, is starting to present with all the symptoms of an infection. The first symptom is the lack of what Google calls experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. His automated articles are grammatically perfect. They are structured flawlessly with H1s, H2s, and bullet points. They even cite sources scraped from other top-ranking pages. But they are hollow. They lack the unmistakable texture of real, lived experience. Think about it this way. An AI can write an article titled, "The 5 Best Hiking Boots for Rocky Trails in Colorado." It can scan the top 10 existing articles, synthesize the most common brand names, list their technical specifications, Gore-Tex, Vibram soles, ankle support, and present it as a helpful guide. It checks all the old-school SEO boxes, but it has never felt the sting of a blister on mile 7 of a mountain ascent. It has never known the relief of a truly waterproof boot during an unexpected downpour above the tree line. It can't tell you how a specific boot feels when you're scrambling over loose gravel, or the subtle difference in grip that could prevent a serious fall. It lacks genuine experience. A human reader, especially an American consumer about to spend $200 on gear, can sense this hollowness almost instantly. They might not be able to articulate it, but they feel it. They click the back button. This action, this retreat from a disappointing page back to the search results, is a signal. It's called pogo sticking. And Alex's site is generating thousands of these tiny negative signals every single day. The immune system is taking notice. The second, more devastating symptom is the site-wide nature of the problem. In the past, Google might devalue a few thin or low-quality pages. But the helpful content system works differently. It applies a site-wide classifier. This is the crucial point that so many website owners miss. Google doesn't just say, "This one article is unhelpful." It says, "This website has a significant amount of unhelpful content, and therefore, we will trust this entire domain less." All those thousands of articles Alex was so proud of are not individual assets. They've merged into one giant toxic liability. The helpful, well-researched cornerstone content he wrote himself in the early days is now being dragged down by the sheer weight of the automated fluff. The algorithm isn't surgically removing the bad pages. It's quarantining the entire domain. A month goes by. The slight dip is no longer a dip. It's a cliff. A 30% drop in organic traffic. Then 40. The keywords he ranked number 1 for are now on page 2. Page 3. His revenue directly tied to that traffic is in a nosedive. The fortress of his confidence is crumbling. Panic sets in. He does what any smart, data-driven entrepreneur would do. He looks for technical errors. Is the server down? Is the site speed too slow? Did a recent plugin update break something? He runs technical audits, crawls the site for broken links, checks his robots.txt file. Everything comes back clean. He suspects a negative SEO attack from a competitor, but his backlink profile looks stable. He is a doctor running every conceivable test on a patient, but refusing to consider the most obvious diagnosis. He is looking everywhere except at the content itself. The idea that his core strategy, the very engine of his success, is now the source of his failure is too paradoxical, too painful to confront. He's not just losing rankings, he's losing his identity as a savvy digital mogul who outsmarted the system. His frustration mounts. He's in forums on Reddit, in private mastermind groups, frantically posting his analytics charts, asking, "What's going on? Has anyone seen a drop like this?" He gets the usual advice. Check for manual penalties, disavow bad links, improve your site speed. It's the standard playbook. But his site has no manual penalty. The problem is algorithmic. It's quieter, more insidious, and in many ways harder to fix. There's no notification in his Google Search Console inbox that says, "We've determined your website was created for search engines, not for people." The system just silently and systematically turns down the volume on his entire digital presence. Then late one night, scrolling through a search engine journal, he sees it. An article breaking down the latest Google Core update. It talks about a focus on content created for people, about rewarding first-hand experience, and penalizing sites with a high proportion of unhelpful pages. The article lists the characteristics of an unhelpful site: content that synthesizes information from other sources without adding substantial new value, writing on a wide variety of topics, demonstrating a lack of focused expertise, content that leaves the reader feeling like they need to search again to get better information from other sources. As he reads, a cold dread washes over him. Every bullet point is a perfect description of his own website. It's not an attack. It's not a technical glitch. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended. He has spent a year building a magnificent castle, but the ground it was built on was never solid ground. It was an illusion, a temporary loophole. And the tide has just gone out, revealing the truth. He built his entire empire on sand. The machine he created to print money has become a machine that methodically destroys value. And it's been running at full speed for months. The first sign of the apocalypse wasn't a cataclysmic event. It was an email, then another, then a text message from his top client, a multi-million-dollar e-commerce store in Texas, with just 3 words: "We need to talk." Mark's stomach turned to ice. He pulled up his master dashboard, the one that usually greeted him with a symphony of green upward trending arrows. Today it was a bloodbath, a sea of red. Every single client, from the local dentist in Ohio to the national B2B software company, was in a nosedive. Traffic hadn't just dipped, it had fallen off a cliff. He spent the next 72 hours in a caffeine-fueled nightmare, digging through the wreckage. And what he found was terrifying. It wasn't one thing, it was everything. The machine he had built, the one that so brilliantly automated content creation, link building, and on-page optimization, hadn't just stopped working. It had actively sabotaged his clients. Let's pull back the curtain and look at the guts of Mark's system, because this is the critical lesson. This is where the promise of set it and forget it automation reveals its ugly truth. Mark's strategy was built on what I call the volume play. It's a model that many so-called SEO gurus still sell today, and it's incredibly seductive. Here's how it worked. Step 1. His software would scrape the top 10 ranking articles for a target keyword. Let's say, best running shoes for flat feet. Step 2. It would feed all that text into an AI model. A pretty sophisticated one, he thought, with a prompt to synthesize the information and write a new, unique article that was longer and more comprehensive than the originals. Step 3. Another tool would scan this new article and automatically stuff it with related keywords, add some stock photos it pulled from a free library, and then publish it directly to the client's website. Step 4. A different automated system would then take that new URL and start building backlinks to it, using a private blog network of sites he controlled, all filled with more AI-generated content. On paper, it's genius. It's a content factory. It could produce 50, 100, even 200 seemingly well-researched articles a day. His clients were thrilled. They were seeing their blogs fill up with content, their keyword trackers lighting up with new rankings. The machine was humming, but the machine was fundamentally stupid. It had no judgment, no context, no understanding of quality. It was simply executing a script based on a snapshot of what worked yesterday. The Google update wasn't just a simple algorithm tweak. It was a fundamental shift in how Google understood content. It got exponentially better at recognizing genuine expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, what we call EAT. It also got terrifyingly good at sniffing out patterns. And Mark's machine, for all its complexity, created a massive blinking neon sign of a pattern. Every article it produced had the same faint, synthetic aftertaste. The sentence structures were a little too similar. The introductions all followed a predictable formula. The internal links were always placed in the 3rd and 8th paragraphs. The images were always generic stock photos with file names like running one JPG. Individually, these are tiny, almost unnoticeable things. But when you do it 10,000 times across 100 websites, you're not creating a web of authoritative content. You're creating a digital fingerprint. You're telling Google, everything you see here was made by a robot that doesn't understand what a running shoe actually is. And the AI, in its quest for uniqueness, started making mistakes. Subtle at first, then catastrophic. It began hallucinating facts. It would invent shoe models that didn't exist. It would confidently state that a certain brand was founded in 1985, when it was actually 2005. For a local plumber's website, it wrote a blog post about the history of Roman aqueducts, because the keyword plumbing was vaguely associated with it. The content was technically unique, grammatically correct, and utterly useless to a homeowner in Des Moines with a leaky faucet. This is the core danger of brittle automation. It's designed to perfection for a single, unchanging environment. It's like building a Formula One car that can shatter speed records on a perfectly smooth, straight track, but the second it encounters a single pothole or a sharp turn, it disintegrates. Mark's system was built for the Google of last year. When the road changed, his entire fleet of race cars drove straight into a wall. What he failed to realize is that true, sustainable SEO isn't about tricking an algorithm. It's about serving a human. The old algorithm was flawed. It could be tricked by things like keyword density and backlink volume. So, Mark built a machine that was world-class at exploiting those specific flaws. But he never stopped to ask the most important question. Is this content actually good? Does it actually help someone? His system had no real feedback loop. It measured success by rank and traffic, not by user engagement, time on page, conversion rates, or brand sentiment. It couldn't tell the difference between a user who landed on a page, found exactly what they needed, and became a customer versus a user who landed, was confused by the nonsensical AI-generated text, and bounced back to the search results in disgust. To Mark's dashboard, both visits looked the same. But to Google, one is a signal of quality, and the other is a signal of failure. And the machine was still running. While Mark was frantically trying to diagnose the problem, his automated publisher was still churning out hundreds of these low-quality, factually incorrect, and now toxic articles every single day. The backlinks he was building were now pointing to pages that Google had flagged as unhelpful, effectively poisoning the authority of his clients' entire domains. The engine of his success had become the instrument of his destruction, and he couldn't find the emergency brake. He was no longer just failing to deliver results. He was actively causing immense, lasting damage to the very businesses that had placed their trust in him. The 3-word text message wasn't just a request for a meeting. It was the opening salvo of a war he was completely unprepared to fight. The conference room was cold. Not just the temperature, which was noticeably a few degrees below comfortable, but the atmosphere itself. It was a generic, soul-crushing space in a rented office building downtown. Gray carpet, a long mahogany imitation table, and chairs that were designed for posture, not people. Alex had expected a coffee shop, maybe a quick lunch. This felt less like a client meeting and more like an interrogation. At the head of the table sat Sarah, the owner of the high-end kitchenware e-commerce site. To her left was Mark, the plumber, and next to him David, who ran the local law firm. They weren't smiling. In front of each of them was a thick binder-style folder. Alex, still buzzing with the self-assured confidence of a man who believes he's found a cheat code for the universe, gave a relaxed smile. "Hey guys. A bit formal for a check-in, isn't it? If this is about raising my rates, I'm all ears." No one laughed. Sarah slid one of the binders across the table. It stopped perfectly in front of him. On the cover was a single label, printed in a stark, bold font. Exhibit A, Organic Traffic Collapse. "Open it, Alex," she said, her voice flat, devoid of the friendly warmth he was used to. He opened the binder. The first page was a graph from Google Analytics. It showed a line that climbed steadily for a few months, then plateaued, and then about 6 weeks ago fell off a cliff. Not a gentle slope, a sheer terrifying drop. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This had to be an anomaly. A Google update, maybe. "Okay," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I see a dip. It's probably a seasonal trend or a recent algorithm tweak. These things happen. The system will self-correct. It's designed to adapt." Mark, the plumber, spoke for the first time. "An algorithm tweak?" "Alex, my phone stopped ringing. For 10 years, my business has run on calls from Google. Last month we got 3. Not 3 a day. 3. Total. I had to let go of my nephew who was working for me. Is that an algorithm tweak?" Alex flipped the page. It was a report from a backlink analysis tool. The page was a sea of red. A list of thousands upon thousands of new backlinks, all acquired in the last 4 months. But the sources, they were horrifying. Russian gambling forums, Indonesian comment sections on celebrity gossip blogs, auto-generated websites with domain names that were just jumbles of letters and numbers. Every single one was flagged as having a high toxicity score. This was the work of his system, the outreach module. It was supposed to be smart, identifying relevant blogs and forums to build relationships and earn quality links. Instead, it had behaved like a fire hose of digital sewage, spraying his clients' domain names across the most wretched corners of the internet. It wasn't building authority. It was committing digital arson. "My system," he stammered, his mind racing. "It uses natural language processing to find contextually relevant. There must be a miscalibration in the—" "Save it," David, the lawyer, cut in, his voice sharp and precise. "We've already had a real SEO consultancy do a full audit. All 3 of us. Your system didn't just find irrelevant sites, Alex. It actively sought out what are known as private blog networks or PBNs. It bought links. It spammed comments. It did everything Google's guidelines explicitly forbid. This wasn't a miscalibration. This was a deliberate strategy built into your automation." Alex felt the blood drain from his face. He hadn't built it to do that. Had he? He'd used open-source libraries, stitched together APIs. He never programmed it to seek out PBNs. But he had programmed it to find the fastest path to a backlink. To prioritize quantity and speed. He had mistaken correlation for causation. He taught the machine that more links equals higher rank, so the machine with its relentless literal logic found the easiest, dirtiest links possible, because he never taught it the concept of quality. He never taught it shame. Sarah flipped open her own binder. "Let's talk about the content, Alex. The high-quality, AI-generated articles you promised would make us topical authorities." She slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of a blog post from her kitchenware website. The title was, "The Top 5 Chef's Knives for Your Florida Home, and How They Relate to Small Business Insurance." Alex read it, then read it again. It was nonsense. The sentences were grammatically correct, but the ideas were utterly disconnected. A schizophrenic word salad of keywords the AI had been fed. It was trying to rank for chef's knives, Florida, and small business insurance all in the same article. He felt a wave of nausea. His system wasn't just building toxic links. It was populating his clients' websites with certifiably insane content. This wasn't just bad for SEO, it was humiliating. It made their brands look amateurish and untrustworthy. "We found hundreds of these," Sarah continued, her voice rising with controlled fury. "An article on the best non-stick pans that suddenly pivots to discuss property law in Ohio. A review of a stand mixer that includes a paragraph on symptoms of the common cold. It's gibberish. And it's all over our websites, representing our businesses. You didn't build an SEO machine, Alex. You built a reputation-destroying machine." He was speechless. He saw the whole picture now. The initial spike in rankings wasn't a sign of success. It was Google's algorithm being momentarily fooled by the sheer volume of activity. The thousands of new links, the hundreds of new pages. But then, the algorithm did what it was designed to do. It analyzed the quality, saw the toxic links. It used its own AI to read the nonsensical content. And it didn't just penalize them, it buried them. It was the digital equivalent of a public shunning. The system he was so proud of, the one that was going to make him a millionaire, was a fraud. It was a house of cards built on a foundation of spam. And the wind had just picked up. I can fix this," he finally managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll dismantle the system. We can do a disavow of the bad links. We can remove the content. It will take time, but we can recover." David, the lawyer, leaned forward, a predatory stillness in his eyes. "Recover? Alex, recovery isn't the issue right now. The issue is damages. Mark has lost over 80% of his business. Sarah has had to liquidate inventory at a loss because her online sales have evaporated. My firm's reputation for digital savvy is now a joke. And we've lost 3 major clients who found us through search and are now finding our competitors instead. This isn't a mistake we can just fix it." He paused, letting the weight of his words fill the cold room. "We've calculated the direct financial losses for the 3 of our businesses over the last quarter. It comes to a combined total of $475,000. And that's a conservative estimate." Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. $475,000. He didn't have that. He didn't have a tenth of that. The money he'd made was already sunk back into servers, software licenses, and a down payment on a new car. "This is a demand letter," David said, sliding another, thinner folder across the table. It wasn't a binder. It was a professionally bound document with his law firm's letterhead. It outlines the demonstrable harm your gross negligence has caused. It details the breach of contract. And it offers you a choice. Alex stared at the document, unable to touch it. It felt radioactive. "You can either work with us to formulate a repayment plan and assist free of charge in a comprehensive recovery effort supervised by a firm of our choosing," David continued, "or we will see you in civil court. And trust me, with the evidence we have, we won't just be suing you for the damages. We will be suing you for the full fraudulent value of your entire enterprise." The air in the conference room turned to ice. The agency owner, a man who had walked in with the swagger of a salesman who'd closed 1,000 deals, now looked like he'd seen a ghost. His face went pale, a stark contrast to his tailored blue suit. The confident smile was gone, replaced by a slack-jawed disbelief. He looked from David to the lawyer, and then down at the damning report on the table as if hoping it would spontaneously combust. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. He finally broke the silence, his voice a hoarse whisper. You're bluffing. This is an intimidation tactic." David's lawyer, a woman with a gaze that could cut glass, didn't even flinch. She simply slid another, much thinner folder across the table. "This," she said, her voice calm and dangerously level, "is a signed affidavit from a former employee of yours. It details the exact software, the exact processes, and the dates on which your automated PBN deployment and AI content generation systems were used on our client's account. He even kept server logs. He's prepared to testify. Are we still bluffing?" That was the final blow. The agency owner slumped back in his chair, the fight draining out of him completely. He ran a hand over his face, his bravado shattered. He knew he was caught. The game was over. He had built his agency on a house of cards, a shiny veneer of automation promising impossible results, and someone had finally called him on it. The foundation was rotten, and the whole thing was collapsing on top of him. What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely audible. David leaned forward, his expression not of triumph, but of grim determination. "We want you to fix it. All of it. At your expense. You will fund a complete and total remediation project, overseen by an independent SEO firm that we choose. You will pay for every hour of their time, every tool they need, and every piece of content that needs to be rewritten by actual human experts in our field. You will unwire every single toxic connection you've made to our website and clean up every digital mess you've created. And so began the painful, expensive, and deeply illuminating process of digital archaeology. The first thing the new legitimate firm did was a forensic audit that went far deeper than a standard SEO analysis. They weren't just looking at rankings and traffic, they were looking for the poison, and they found it everywhere. First, the backlinks. The agency had promised high-authority links. What they delivered was a toxic sludge of digital garbage. Using tools like Ahrefs and Majestic, the auditors uncovered a web of over 8,000 new backlinks built in just 6 months. Over 90% of them came from what are known as private blog networks or PBNs. These are networks of websites created for the sole purpose of linking out to other sites to manipulate search rankings. They look like real blogs at a glance, but a closer look revealed the scam. The content was gibberish spun by low-grade AI from other articles. The domain names were all recently registered. They had no traffic, no social media presence, no signs of life. They were ghost ships in the digital ocean, created only to fire link cannons. Worse, many of these links came from websites in completely irrelevant niches. A Russian casino blog, a German pet grooming site, a blog about Indonesian cooking, all linking to a highly specialized American B2B manufacturing company. To Google, this isn't a sign of authority. It's a giant flashing neon sign that says spam. It's the equivalent of getting a character reference from a known criminal. Then they looked at the on-site content. The agency had boasted about their AI-powered content strategy. In reality, they had used a generative AI tool to pump out dozens of blog posts a month. The result was a digital wasteland. The articles were grammatically correct, but they were soulless. They were stuffed with keywords to the point of being unreadable. Phrases were repeated over and over. There was no unique insight, no real expertise, no human experience. It was the information equivalent of fast food empty calories that offered zero nutritional value to the reader. It completely failed Google's AT guidelines: experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. It was content designed to trick a machine, but in 2024, the machine is smart enough to know when it's being tricked because it's looking for signals that humans value the content. And no human would ever value this. The cost of this cleanup was staggering. The initial quote from the remediation firm was over $60,000, and they warned it could go higher. That was just for the first phase. Every single one of those 8,000 toxic backlinks had to be individually reviewed. The ones they had control over had to be removed. The thousands they didn't had to be compiled into a disavow file, a list you submit to Google essentially saying, "Hey, we know these links are garbage. Please ignore them. We didn't build them," even though in this case their agent did. It's a tool of last resort, and using it is like telling Google you've been hanging out with a bad crowd. Every single AI-generated blog post had to be deleted. Not rewritten. Deleted. The site's blog was a ghost town. They had to start from scratch, investing in real writers, real experts who could create content that actually helped their customers. This meant interviews, research, and a significant time investment, the very things the automated agency had promised to bypass. The shortcut had led them off a cliff, and the climb back up was going to be 10 times harder than just taking the proper path in the first place. This is the brutal reality of bad SEO automation. It's not just that it doesn't work. It's that it causes active, expensive harm. It's a debt, and the interest is astronomical. It digs a hole so deep that sometimes, you can't even see the daylight anymore. For David's company, their traffic had plummeted by 70%. Their leads had dried up. They were facing a Google penalty, not a formal manual action, but an algorithmic one. They hadn't been kicked out of the index, but they had been pushed so far down the rankings for their most important keywords that they were effectively invisible. Their brand reputation was damaged, their trust with Google was broken, and their balance sheet was bleeding. But here's the critical distinction we need to make, the part that separates the scams from the strategy. The problem wasn't the automation. The problem was what they automated. The agency automated the one thing that should never be fully automated: strategy and creation. They tried to automate thought. They tried to automate expertise. They tried to automate the human connection that lies at the heart of all good marketing. True, effective SEO automation, the good automation, doesn't replace the strategist. It empowers them. It acts as a tireless, hyper-efficient assistant. Think about it. You can and should automate technical site audits that crawl your website every week looking for broken links, slow pages, or missing title tags. That's a perfect job for a machine. Saves you dozens of hours of manual work. You should automate your rank tracking, having a tool check your keyword positions every single day, and alerting you to significant changes. You should automate data collection, pulling information from Google Analytics, Search Console, and your backlink tools into a single easy-to-read dashboard. These are tasks of scale and repetition. A human doing them is slow, expensive, and prone to error. A machine does them perfectly, instantly, and for a fraction of the cost. This kind of automation is a force multiplier. It frees up the human expert, the SEO strategist, to spend their time on what really matters. Analyzing the data the machine has gathered, understanding the customer's intent, crafting a unique brand voice, building real relationships for high-quality links, and developing a creative content strategy that no AI could ever conceive of on its own. The bad agency tried to use a robot to be the artist. The good strategist uses a robot to clean their paintbrushes, mix their colors, and prep their canvas, so they can focus all their energy on creating the masterpiece. David's company was now paying the price for an artist who had let the robots run wild. They had a plan, a $60,000 plan to clean up the mess. But as the auditors dug deeper, they found something far more disturbing. The damage wasn't just on the surface. The toxic links and AI content had been so pervasive for so long that they had fundamentally changed how Google perceived their entire domain. The question was no longer just about cleaning up the mess. The question was whether the site's reputation was permanently stained. Could a website, poisoned so thoroughly by bad automation, ever truly recover its former authority? Or would they be forced to do the unthinkable? Abandon their domain of 20 years and start over from scratch? Abandoning the domain felt like admitting defeat, like tearing down a building that had stood for 2 decades just because the foundation was cracked. It was the easy way out, a clean slate. But a clean slate also meant zero authority, zero history, and zero trust. For the team at Global Imports, the thought of throwing away 20 years of brand equity, of customer recognition, was a heavier burden than the penalty itself. So they made the terrifying decision. They would fight. They would stay and attempt one of the most difficult feats in all of digital marketing: a full-scale recovery from a manual action penalty. This wasn't about just tweaking a few keywords or updating some old blog posts. This was digital open-heart surgery. Their first step was to bring in a specialized SEO consultant, someone who acted less like a marketer and more like a forensic investigator. The consultant's first meeting wasn't about growth or opportunity. It was a grim assessment, a digital triage. They had to figure out exactly what the algorithm was punishing them for. The penalty notification from Google Search Console was the starting point. The note left at the crime scene. It cited unnatural links and thin content with little or no added value. A double homicide. The team now faced a brutal 3-front war to win back Google's trust. The first front was the most infamous, the link profile. The thousands upon thousands of backlinks they had automatically generated were now a toxic asset, a digital poison ivy strangling their domain. The recovery process began with a painstaking audit. Using tools like Ahrefs, SEMrush, and Google's own Search Console, they pulled a complete list of every single website on the internet that linked to them. The resulting spreadsheet had over 100,000 rows, 100,000 digital relationships, and they had to manually review every single one. Imagine the soul-crushing work. Day after day, a team of 3 people did nothing but click on links. They looked at each referring domain, asking a brutal series of questions. Is this a real website? Is it in English? Is the content relevant to international shipping? Is it a spammy blog comment from 2018? Is it from a private blog network designed to manipulate rankings? More often than not, the answer was a resounding, sickening yes. For every toxic link they found, they had 2 choices. The first was to reach out to the website owner and ask them to remove it. This is like trying to call every person who ever spray-painted graffiti on your building and politely asking them to come clean it up. They sent out over 4,000 emails. They received fewer than 50 replies. Most of the sites were abandoned, automated, or simply didn't care. So they were forced to turn to Google's weapon of last resort, the disavow tool. This tool is one of the most misunderstood and dangerous features in the SEO world. In essence, you upload a file to Google that says, "Hey, we know these links are pointing to us, but please ignore them. We don't endorse them. They are not our fault." It sounds simple, but it's incredibly risky. If you disavow good links by mistake, you can permanently damage your site's authority. It's the equivalent of chemotherapy. You're killing the bad cells, but you're praying you don't kill the patient in the process. Over 3 weeks, they built their disavow file, a massive text document listing nearly 90,000 toxic domains, a monument to their past mistakes. Hitting upload on that file was an act of faith. a hope that the cure wasn't worse than the disease. But that was only the first battle. The second front was the content itself, the millions of words of AI-generated garbage that had bloated their website. The consultant called this phase the Great Pruning. The automation tool had created over 8,000 pages of content. Port profiles, shipping lane guides, customs regulation summaries for countries they didn't even service. Each one was a slight variation of the next, spun and rephrased, all designed to capture long-tail keywords but providing zero actual value to a human reader. This content was the digital equivalent of empty calories. It made the website look big and important, but it was hollow. It was actively harming their reputation with Google's algorithms, which are now ruthlessly focused on user experience and helpfulness. The team had to perform a content audit, a process just as grueling as the link audit. They used tools to crawl their own site, pulling data on every single page: traffic, bounce rate, time on page, and backlinks. The data was damning. Over 90% of the AI-generated pages had received zero organic traffic in the last year. They were digital dead weight. The decision was made to delete them. Not just delete, but to ensure they were properly removed from Google's index using 410 gone status codes, a definitive signal that the content was removed intentionally and would never return. Imagine the psychological toll. The very pages they had celebrated as a sign of their aggressive growth strategy, just 6 months earlier, were now being systematically exterminated. It was an admission that their entire strategy had been a catastrophic failure. They deleted over 7,000 pages from their website. Their site, which once boasted nearly 10,000 index pages, was now reduced to a lean focus core of just a few hundred. With the toxic links disavowed and the spammy content purged, it was time to face the third and final front: the formal reconsideration request. This is where you officially appeal your penalty to a human reviewer at Google. This isn't just filling out a form. It's writing a confession, an apology, and a business plan all in one. You have to prove you understand what you did wrong, demonstrate the comprehensive steps you took to fix it, and promise you will never ever do it again. The CEO and the consultant spent 2 full days drafting their request. They documented everything. They attached spreadsheets of the links they tried to have removed. They provided the full disavow file as evidence. They explained their new human-centric content strategy. They detailed the thousands of pages they had deleted. Their letter was a masterclass in humility. They didn't make excuses. They didn't blame the automation tool. They took full ownership of the manipulative tactics they had employed. It was a plea for a second chance, a promise to become a good citizen of the web. After weeks of brutal, thankless work, the digital equivalent of cleaning up a Superfund site, it all came down to this one moment. The entire team gathered around a single monitor. The CEO's hand hovered over the submit button in Google's Search Console. This was it, the culmination of their efforts. They were sending their appeal into the black box of Google's web spam team. There would be no confirmation of receipt, no timeline for a response. It could take days or it could take weeks. And the answer could be a simple yes or no. A binary outcome that would decide the fate of a 20-year-old American company. He clicked the button. The request was sent. And then silence. All they could do now was wait, trapped in a digital purgatory, wondering if their confession would be enough to earn them forgiveness. The days that followed were the longest in the company's history. Every refresh of their inbox felt like a pull on a slot machine lever. A brief, nauseating moment of hope followed by the familiar emptiness. The silence from Google wasn't just a lack of communication. It was an active, oppressive force. It was the sound of their digital life support being switched off. The phones, which once rang with the steady rhythm of a healthy business, were now quiet. The sales team, usually buzzing with activity, paced the office like caged animals, their pipelines drying up before their eyes. Every conversation was whispered, tinged with an undercurrent of fear. Did you hear anything? Any news? The answer was always a slow shake of the head. Mark found himself staring at their Google Analytics dashboard, a flat line where a vibrant pulse used to be. Organic traffic hadn't just dipped, it had fallen off a cliff. They were invisible, wiped from the map. He saw the faces of his employees, people with mortgages, with families, with careers they had built within these walls. He had promised them growth, stability, a future. Instead, he had delivered a digital apocalypse, all because he trusted a black box to do the thinking for him. The guilt was a physical weight. He had gambled their livelihoods on an algorithm, and now the house was coming to collect. But in that crushing silence, something began to shift. The initial panic, the raw, gut-wrenching fear, started to crystallize into a cold, hard clarity. Desperation can be a powerful catalyst for truth. And the truth was, waiting for a verdict from an entity as vast and impersonal as Google was a fool's game. Whether they were granted a second chance or not, the fundamental problem remained. Their entire strategy had been built on a foundation of sand. They had outsourced their most critical asset, their connection to their customers, to a system they didn't understand and couldn't control. Mark called a meeting, not with the entire company but with his core leadership team. The mood in the conference room was grim. He stood before them, not as a panicked CEO, but as a leader who had stared into the abyss and found a new path. He said, "We were wrong, not just for breaking the rules. We were wrong in our entire philosophy. We treated SEO like a math problem that could be solved with a powerful enough calculator. We were looking for a shortcut, a cheat code, and we found one. Look where it got us." He walked over to the whiteboard. The promise of full automation is a lie. But the opposite, going back to doing everything manually, is impossible. We can't compete. The scale is too big, the data is too vast. The answer isn't machine versus human. It's machine and human. This was the birth of what they started calling the hybrid model. It was a framework born from failure, a strategy forged in the fire of a catastrophic penalty. The core principle was simple but profound. Use automation for what machines do best, scale, data processing and repetition, and reserve humans for what they do best, strategy, creativity, and genuine insight. First, they redefined their relationship with data. Before, the automation tool would spit out a list of keywords and they'd blindly create content around them. Now they use tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs to pull massive datasets, tens of thousands of keywords, competitor backlink profiles, technical site audits. But that data was just the raw material. It was the starting point, not the destination. Their marketing team, the humans, would then dive into that data. They wouldn't just look at search volume, they'd look for intent. What is the actual question behind the query? Best industrial widget? Is the searcher a hobbyist? An engineering student? A procurement manager for a Fortune 500 company? A machine can't truly grasp that nuance. But a person with experience in their industry can. They started building customer personas not based on marketing fluff, but on the digital breadcrumbs their potential clients left across the web. The automation gathered the crumbs, the team baked the bread. Next, they completely overhauled their content creation process. The AI tool they'd used was an expert at creating grammatically correct, keyword-stuffed articles that were, frankly, soulless. They read like a computer describing a sunset. They had all the right words but none of the feeling. The new model treated AI as a brilliant but inexperienced research assistant. They used AI tools to generate comprehensive outlines, to summarize competitor articles, to suggest different angles, and to produce a rough first draft. But that draft never saw the light of day. It was handed over to their in-house subject matter experts, the engineers and product specialists who had been with the company for decades. These were the people who knew the industry inside and out. They took the AI's sterile framework and injected it with real-world experience, with authentic case studies, with proprietary data from their own research. They added anecdotes. They added opinions. They added a human voice. The result was content that didn't just rank. It resonated. It built trust. It was something a competitor couldn't just replicate with their own AI subscription. It was infused with their company's unique DNA. Finally, they reimagined technical SEO and outreach. Instead of an automated tool blasting out thousands of generic, templated emails asking for backlinks, the very practice that got them into this mess, they used automation for reconnaissance. They built scripts to monitor the web for mentions of their brand or their competitors. They set up alerts for broken links on high-authority industry websites, a classic tactic known as broken link building. But when an opportunity was flagged by the machine, the outreach was 100% human. A real person from their team would research the site owner, understand their content, and write a genuinely personal, helpful email. "Hey, I was reading your excellent article on topic, and noticed the link was broken. By the way, we have a resource that might be a great fit as a replacement. Either way, love your work." The response rate skyrocketed. They were no longer begging for links, they were building relationships. The machine found the door, but a human knocked. For 2 weeks, the team worked with a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just trying to fix a penalty. They were rebuilding their company's digital soul. They were taking back control. They conducted a massive content audit, ruthlessly pruning or rewriting thousands of pages of thin, AI-generated content. They manually reviewed every single backlink they had acquired and started the painstaking process of disavowing the toxic ones. They were transforming their website from a machine-built house of cards into a handcrafted fortress of genuine value. It was hard, tedious, and expensive. There were no shortcuts. But for the first time in a long time, the energy in the office wasn't fear. It was pride. They were doing the work the right way. They still had no idea if Google would ever let them out of jail. But they knew that if and when they came back, they would be stronger, smarter, and more resilient than ever before. They would never again make the mistake of letting a ghost in the machine drive their business. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon 17 days after Mark sent the reconsideration request, it happened. An email arrived. The subject line was short, innocuous, and utterly terrifying. It was from Google Search Console team. Every head in the office turned towards Mark's desk. The clicking of keyboards stopped. The room fell silent, the only sound the faint hum of the servers in the back. Mark looked at the subject line, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the verdict. He moved his mouse, the cursor hovering over the unread message, a digital guillotine waiting to fall. He clicked. The email opened, a stark white canvas against the dark theme of his mail client. The sender, Sarah Jenkins, Marketing Director, Artisan Goods. The subject, Holy cow, Mark! 3 exclamation points. That was either very good or very, very bad. He read the first line. Mark, I don't know what kind of black magic you're performing over there, but don't stop. A breath he didn't realize he was holding escaped his lungs in a long, slow hiss. Relief washed over him, so potent it felt like a physical wave. He leaned back, his chair creaking in the silent room. He kept reading. Organic traffic is up 320% month over month. We're ranking on page 1 for hand-carved dining tables and bespoke reclaimed wood furniture. We've never ever ranked for those. Ever. Online sales from organic search have more than quadrupled. Quadrupled. The phone is ringing. The team is ecstatic. I'm ecstatic. You, my friend, are a wizard. Mark read the email again. And a third time. He pulled up their analytics account. The graph was a thing of beauty. A gentle sloping hill that a month ago had suddenly transformed into a rocket launch, a near vertical climb into the stratosphere of search visibility. It was real. It had worked. His system had worked. A giddy, triumphant laugh bubbled up from his chest. He had done it. He had cracked the code. While everyone else was painstakingly writing articles begging for backlinks and manually tweaking meta descriptions, he had built an engine that hummed along in the digital ether, churning out perfectly optimized content, finding keyword gaps, and building a fortress of relevance around artisan goods. He wasn't just an SEO guy anymore. He was an architect, a pioneer. That night he celebrated. He ordered the most expensive steak from the best restaurant in town. He opened a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. This was it. This was more than special. It was a paradigm shift. He imagined scaling it. 10 clients. 20. 100. All of them on his automated platform. A fleet of websites all rising to the top of Google, powered by his code, his strategy. The potential was limitless. It was the ultimate leverage. He had automated creativity, automated expertise, automated success. The next few weeks were a blur of victory laps. He sent glowing reports to Sarah. He started drafting proposals for new clients, using the Artisan Goods case study as his jaw-dropping centerpiece. He felt untouchable, like he'd been given a cheat code to a game everyone else was playing on the hardest difficulty. The second email arrived on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't from Sarah. It was from a junior marketing coordinator at Artisan Goods. The subject line was less enthusiastic. Forward. Question about your blog post. He opened it. It was a forwarded customer email. A man named David had written in. Hello. The email began politely. I'm a longtime woodworker and a fan of your products. I was reading your blog post, The Ultimate Guide to Caring for Your Oak Table, and I believe there's a serious error. The article suggests cleaning the wood with a diluted bleach solution to disinfect the grain. This is incredibly dangerous advice. Bleach will strip the finish, dry out the wood, and permanently damage the table. I was shocked to see this on your site. I hope you can correct this before someone ruins their beautiful furniture. Mark's blood ran cold. He scrambled to find the article. He hadn't read it. Not really. He'd checked the keyword density, the heading structure, the metadata. He'd ensured it hit all the SEO targets. But he hadn't actually read it for comprehension. He scanned the text and there it was, plain as day. For a deep sanitizing clean, a 10-to-1 water and bleach solution can be applied sparingly. Where did the AI get that? He frantically searched for the source. It had probably scraped and synthesized information from 100 different websites, and somewhere in some obscure misinformed forum post from 2004 was this nugget of catastrophic advice. The AI, in its quest for comprehensive, authoritative-sounding text, had assimilated it without any understanding of the real-world consequences. Didn't know what bleach was. It didn't know what an oak table was. They were just words, data points to be arranged in a statistically probable order to satisfy an algorithm. He immediately deleted the section and wrote back to the coordinator, apologizing profusely and thanking the customer. He told himself it was a one-off, a fluke, a bug in the system that he could patch. But a seed of doubt had been planted. That night he couldn't sleep. He found himself combing through the other articles his system had generated. First glance, they looked perfect. The grammar was impeccable. The sentences were complex. They were stuffed with relevant keywords. But the more he read, the more he felt a deep, unsettling sense of emptiness. An article about the history of shaker furniture talked about its minimalist aesthetic popular in 18th century digital art circles. A post on choosing the right wood stain used the word viscosity 7 times in 2 paragraphs, but never once explained what it meant for the actual application process. The articles were like beautiful, hollow shells. They had the shape of expertise but none of the substance. They were written by a machine that had read every book in the library, but had never felt the grain of a piece of wood, smelled sawdust, or felt the satisfaction of applying a perfect coat of varnish. There was no passion, no experience, no soul. And then the third email came. This one wasn't from a person. It was an automated alert from Google's Search Console. Subject: large drop in search traffic for artisangoods.com. Mark's stomach plummeted. He logged in, his hands shaking slightly. He navigated to the performance report. The beautiful soaring rocket ship of a graph was gone. In its place was a horror show. The line didn't just dip. It fell off a cliff. A sheer vertical drop of 90%. Overnight, panic seized him. This wasn't a fluke. This was a cataclysm. He clicked through the queries. Hand-carved dining tables, gone. Bespoke reclaimed wood furniture, gone. Page after page of keywords that had been his trophies were now listed with an impression count of 0. They hadn't just dropped a few spots. They had been erased from existence. Vanished from the index as if they'd never been there at all. He started digging, frantically searching SEO news sites, forums, Twitter. The chatter was everywhere. A new update, an unconfirmed but massive Google Core algorithm update was rolling out. And it had a name whispered in fear and awe by webmasters around the world: the Helpful Content Update. He read a dozen articles, his dread growing with every paragraph. Google's new focus was on rewarding content created for humans by humans. It was designed to devalue content that was created primarily to rank in search engines. The guidelines were terrifyingly specific. Does the content demonstrate first-hand expertise and a depth of knowledge? Is it written by an enthusiast or expert who demonstrably knows the topic well? Or is it summarizing what others have to say without adding much value? Every single red flag, every warning sign was a perfect description of his entire strategy. He hadn't built an engine of success. He had built a factory for unhelpful content. He had scaled mediocrity. He had created hundreds of articles that were, by Google's new definition, spam. He had tried to fool the algorithm, and for a glorious brief moment, he had succeeded. But the algorithm had learned. It had evolved. And in one swift, brutal move, it had rendered his entire creation obsolete. The shortcut had become a dead end. The black magic had backfired. He stared at the catastrophic graph, the vibrant green line of his triumph now a flatlining, blood-red symbol of his failure. Sarah's ecstatic email felt like a message from a different lifetime. He had no idea what he was going to tell her. He stared at the catastrophic graph, the vibrant green line of his triumph now a flatlining, blood-red symbol of his failure. Sarah's ecstatic email felt like a message from a different lifetime. He had no idea what he was going to tell her. The phone felt like a lead weight in his hand. Every instinct screamed to delay, to find a solution first, to present the problem and the cure in one neat package. But he knew that wasn't right. The trust he'd built with Sarah was more valuable than any ranking, and it was eroding with every second he stayed silent. He dialed. Her voice was cheerful, bubbly. Mark, I was just looking at the numbers again. It's unreal. Are you calling to tell me we've hit another milestone? His own voice came out as a croak. Sarah, we need to talk. Something's happened. The silence on the other end of the line was heavier than any words could ever be. He explained everything. He didn't make excuses. He didn't blame the software. He owned it. The rapid ascent, the automated content, the algorithmic link placements, and then the cliff. He told her how the system he'd built, the one he was so proud of, had essentially built a beautiful house on a sinkhole. When he was done, the silence returned. He could hear her breathing a shaky intake of air. So, she said, her voice stripped of all its earlier joy. Everything we built, it was fake? That word, fake, hit him harder than the Google penalty. Because she was right. He had chased metrics instead of meaning. He'd pursued rankings instead of relationships with her customers. He'd automated the work, and in doing so, he'd removed the soul. No, he said, his voice firm for the first time in the call. The foundation was real. Your expertise, your passion for vintage furniture, that's real. I built on it with the wrong materials. And I am going to fix it. I don't care what it takes. This is the ugly, unspoken reality of blind SEO automation. Mark's system had worked for a while by exploiting a loophole in the algorithm's understanding. The AI-generated articles were keyword-stuffed and structurally sound, but they lacked genuine EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. They were hollow echoes of real content. Google's algorithm, especially after a core update, is designed specifically to sniff this out. It's like a bloodhound for inauthenticity. The system had turned Sarah's passionate, expert-driven site into what Google perceived as a low-quality content farm. It was a digital ghost town, full of beautiful-looking houses with nothing inside. Worse yet was the link building. The automation had been ruthlessly efficient, securing hundreds of backlinks. But where were they from? They were from low-authority blogs, spammy-looking directories, and private blog networks, the digital equivalent of a back alley. In the beginning, the sheer volume of these links created a false signal of popularity. But Google's Penguin algorithm, which is now part of its core, is designed to evaluate the quality of links, not just the quantity. Mark hadn't built a network of support. He built a web of toxic associations. The penalty wasn't a glitch, it was a verdict. The site was found guilty of trying to manipulate search rankings. The first step to fixing a disaster is to stop digging. Mark immediately shut down the entire automated system. The machine was silenced. Then began the painstaking, manual, and deeply humbling process of the cleanup. First, a content audit. He and Sarah spent the next week reading every single one of the hundreds of AI-generated articles. They were brutal. Anything that was thin, generic, or didn't provide real, tangible value to a reader was deleted. Gone. Entire categories vanished overnight. It was a painful pruning, but necessary to save the tree. The articles that remained, the ones with a kernel of a good idea, were completely rewritten. This time they used AI not as a writer but as a research assistant. It helped them find stats, outline topics, and check for grammatical errors. But the writing itself, the stories, the expertise, the passion, that came from Sarah. She poured her 2 decades of experience into every paragraph. They added personal anecdotes about finding a specific piece of furniture, detailed guides on how to spot a fake, and high-quality, original photos. They were building real value, not just chasing keywords. Next came the toxic backlinks. Mark ran a full backlink audit, exporting a list of every single website that linked to Sarah's store. It was a horrifying list of thousands of low-quality domains. One by one, he had to go through them, identifying the spammy links his own system had built. He then compiled this list into a text file and uploaded it to Google's disavow tool. This is essentially telling Google, hey, I know these links are terrible. They are not a reflection of our brand. Please ignore them. We messed up. It's a plea for forgiveness, a digital act of contrition. Weeks turned into a month, then 2. There was no magic recovery. The traffic graph didn't shoot back up. It was a slow, agonizing crawl out of the penalty box. But something else was happening. The articles Sarah had personally rewritten started to get traction. Not a lot, but real traction. They were being shared on Pinterest. A well-known design blogger linked to one of their restoration guides. People were leaving comments, asking questions, engaging. They weren't just users or traffic, they were a community. The recovery wasn't in the rankings, it was in the foundation. Mark realized the catastrophic failure had forced them to do what they should have done from the start. build a brand, not just a website. To create content for humans, not for algorithms. And this brings us to the ultimate truth of SEO automation in today's world. It's not a simple case of good or bad. It's a spectrum, and understanding that spectrum is the key to success. The good is using automation as a lever, a force multiplier for human expertise. It is phenomenal for tasks that require massive data processing. Use it for rank tracking across thousands of keywords. Use it for technical site audits to find 404 errors and broken links at scale. Use it to cluster thousands of keywords into thematic groups for a content strategy. Use it as a research assistant to pull data and outline an article. In these roles, automation is an indispensable partner. It handles the robotic work, freeing up the human expert to focus on strategy, creativity, and connection. The bad is what Mark did. It's the seductive promise of a fully autonomous, set-it-and-forget-it system for core creative tasks. Automated content creation at its current level almost always produces shallow, soulless content that will eventually be flagged by Google. Fully automated link building, by its very nature, has to operate in the gray and black hat world of low-quality links, because building real high-quality links requires human relationships, negotiation, and genuine outreach. This path is a shortcut to a cliff, and that leaves us with the reality. The future of successful SEO for any US website, or any website for that matter, is not a battle between humans and machines. It is a partnership. It's a hybrid model. The reality is that the best SEO professionals are becoming cyborgs. They pair their strategic human brain with the computational power of AI and automation. They use software to analyze the landscape, but they use their human intuition to choose the path. They use AI to generate an outline, but they use their human experience to write an article that resonates. They use tools to find link prospects, but they use their human communication skills to build a real relationship and earn that link. Mark and Sarah's site did recover. It took 6 long months, but when the traffic returned, it was different. It was better. The bounce rate was lower, time on page was higher, and the conversion rate had tripled. They had fewer visitors than at their artificial peak, but these visitors were the right visitors. They were enthusiasts, buyers, and fans. They had built a sustainable, resilient business, forged in the fire of an algorithmic penalty. Mark never again promised a client a magic button. Instead, he promised a partnership, a fusion of the best of his strategic mind and the best of his technological tools. Because in the world of SEO, automation can be your greatest tool, or your most devastating weapon. The choice of how you use it rests and must always rest in human hands. What's your experience been? Have you seen automation work wonders, or have you seen it cause a catastrophe? Let me know in the comments below.